I came home early from a business trip, unlocked the door, and walked straight into a nightmare. My best friend was in my bed with my husband. For 3 years, Dylan had always had excuses, stress, timing, some vague issue he swore he was trying to fix. I'd spent our entire marriage tiptoeing around his pride, swallowing my frustration, telling myself love meant patience. And there they were, wrapped up in each other like none of that had ever existed. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I smirked, pulled out my phone and hit record. Well, I said, leaning against the door frame like I just walked in on a bad movie. Looks like you're feeling better, huh? They froze. Dylan snapped his head toward me like he'd seen a ghost. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Chloe, my best friend since childhood, was quicker. She yanked the blanket up to her chest, eyes wide, cheeks already flushing with panic. Audrey, wait. Hold on. She stammered. Please don't. Don't do anything yet. Let me explain. I lifted my phone a little higher. Oh, I'm doing something. I'm getting proof. Dylan lunged toward me. Give me that. I stepped back easily, out of reach, my voice still calm. Easy there, honey. Why so jumpy? It's not like I'm the one doing something wrong. Chloe's eyes darted between us like a trapped animal. Audrey, please. It's not what it looks like. I gave her my sweetest smile, the kind I used to wear when we were teenagers, and she'd broken something in my room and tried to blame the cat. Then explain it, I said. Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what it is. Dylan's face went red. Stop being dramatic. Dramatic? I let out a soft laugh. You've been lying to me for 3 years. If anyone deserves to be dramatic, it's me. Chloe swallowed hard. Audrey, don't call Marcus. That name hit the room like a gunshot. Marcus Evans, her husband, my brother-in-law, Dylan's older brother. I'd honestly thought marrying brothers into the same family would be fun. Double dates, holidays together, 2 families blending like some perfect cozy picture. Turns out Chloe didn't want a cozy picture. She wanted everything. You wouldn't dare, Dylan spat. I raised an eyebrow. You had the guts to do this. Why wouldn't I have the guts to tell the truth? Chloe dropped down, grabbing at my leg like I was the last lifeboat on a sinking ship. Audrey, please don't tell him. I know I messed up. I swear I'll fix it. I'll do anything. I looked down at her, my best friend, kneeling on my bedroom floor, shaking, begging, and I almost laughed. Chloe, I said softly, patting her shoulder like she was a child having a tantrum. Get up. The floor's cold. She looked up at me with desperate hope, as if kindness meant forgiveness. If you stay down there, I added, still smiling. My husband might feel sorry for you. Dylan grabbed my arm. What are you doing? Are you trying to destroy our marriage? I turned my head slowly, meeting his eyes, and the nerve of him almost impressed me. Our marriage? I repeated. You mean the one you've been betraying since day one? He tightened his grip. Audrey, stop. I lifted my phone again, the screen reflecting his terrified face. Relax. Want to see how clear the video is? Great lighting, great angle, perfect evidence. Chloe reached for my phone. I dodged without even trying. Oh, I said thoughtfully, like I was brainstorming a caption. Maybe I should title it something cute. Like, my husband and my best friend behind the scenes. Her hands curled into fists. She was trembling with rage now, not just fear. Then my phone rang. Marcus. I answered and put it on speaker. Hey, Marcus said, voice steady. I'm downstairs. What's the apartment number? Chloe went so pale she looked hollowed out. I didn't answer right away. I glanced at Dylan, then at Chloe, then back at the phone. Come up, I said simply. I'll leave the door unlocked. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. Chloe's breathing turned shallow and fast. Dylan looked like he might bolt. Footsteps echoed in the hallway a minute later. I sat down in a chair like I had all the time in the world, lifted my phone again and started recording because if someone tried to twist this, I wanted every second documented. The door opened. Marcus walked in. He didn't look angry at first. He didn't look anything. His face was blank, controlled, like he'd stepped into a meeting instead of a disaster. His gaze swept the room, took in the mess, the rumpled sheets, Chloe clutching the blanket, Dylan standing there like a guilty child. Then Marcus's eyes landed on his younger brother. Dylan's voice cracked. Marcus. Marcus didn't answer him. He looked at me. I held up my phone, still recording. He gave one short nod like he understood everything without a single word. Chloe's knees gave out. She slid to the floor, tears spilling over. Marcus, please. This isn't what you think. Stop. Marcus said, one word. That's all it took to cut her off completely. I watched, weirdly detached. I was the one who had been betrayed, but in that moment, it felt like I was watching some cheap soap opera play out in my bedroom. Marcus finally spoke again, voice low and cold. Get dressed, both of you. They fumbled with their clothes, hands shaking, avoiding eye contact. Dylan kept looking at Marcus like he was waiting for permission to breathe. Once they were decent, Marcus stepped forward and hit Dylan hard, fast, controlled, nothing theatrical. Dylan stumbled back, shocked more than anything, and Marcus grabbed him again, shoving him away like something he couldn't stand to touch. Then Marcus turned, eyes burning. How long? He demanded. Silence, I answered because apparently I was the only one in the room capable of speaking like an adult. 3 years, I said. Chloe sobbed louder as if crying could erase time. 3 years. Exactly how long I'd been married. So it hadn't been a mistake. It hadn't been a lapse. It had been a choice they'd made over and over. Every time Dylan came home to me with another excuse. Every time Chloe hugged me like a sister and smiled in my face. Marcus's jaw clenched. Look at me when you talk. He snapped at Dylan. Dylan forced his head up, eyes glassy, terrified. Bro, I don't. Marcus cut in. His voice sharpened into something almost frightening. Don't call me that. I don't have a brother like you. Dylan looked like he might throw up. Chloe crawled toward Marcus, grabbing at his pants leg. Honey. I'm sorry. I was lonely. You were always working. I made a mistake. Just forgive me this once. I'll cut him off. I swear I'll do anything. She cried like her heart was breaking, but I saw the truth beneath it. Marcus had money. Marcus had stability. Marcus had a life she didn't want to lose. It wasn't love in her eyes. It was panic. Marcus didn't even look down at her. Get out, he said flatly. Chloe's head snapped up. No, we can't. Marcus, please. I said, get out. Dylan swallowed hard. Marcus, please don't. Marcus turned on him. You're done. I stood and walked to Marcus's side, phone still in my hand. I've got everything, I said quietly. Every second, every lie. Let's go. I don't want to stay in this room another minute. Marcus nodded once. Behind us, Chloe's voice rose into a wail. Dylan tried to step forward like he could stop the world from collapsing. I turned back with a polite smile that didn't reach my eyes. Why? Dylan choked. Why are you doing this? I blinked at him. Because you did it first. And then I walked out with Marcus, leaving them in the wreckage they made. The next morning, there was chaos in my company lobby. I was in my office with coffee when a coworker rushed in breathless. Audrey, Chloe's mom, is downstairs. She's making a scene. She's saying you stole her daughter's husband. I almost choked on my coffee. Of course she was. I set the cup down and stood. Let's go see. In the lobby, Mrs. Davis was putting on a performance like she was on a stage. Loud voice, dramatic hands, fake tears. Everyone listen, she cried. This woman is shameless. She seduced my daughter's husband and ruined her marriage. A few people were already watching, whispering. The receptionist looked trapped behind the desk. I leaned against the counter and watched for a moment, amused. Then the receptionist spotted me and exhaled in relief. Mrs. Davis. Ms. Blake is here. Mrs. Davis spun around, eyes blazing. The moment she saw how calm I was, her anger doubled. Oh, you've got nerve, she snapped. Showing your face after what you've done. Why not? I asked, tilting my head. Should I hide like someone who actually did something wrong? Her face turned red. Don't twist this around. My daughter and her husband were perfectly happy until you came along. I scoffed. Is Chloe still lying to you? I thought she outgrew that. Mrs. Davis faltered. What are you talking about? I widened my eyes like I just realized something. Oh, she didn't tell you. A hush spread across the lobby. Your daughter, I said clearly. Chloe Davis, Marcus Evans's wife, was sleeping with Dylan Evans. Gasps. Someone actually covered their mouth. Mrs. Davis's expression cracked. You're making that up. I pulled out my phone. Want proof? I recorded them. Her bravado evaporated. You wouldn't. If you care about my daughter at all. I cut her off. Still come. If you care about your daughter, you should tell her to stop chasing other women's husbands. The divorce is already moving forward. Making a scene here won't change reality. Mrs. Davis looked like she might explode. My daughter can't get divorced. I let out a short laugh. Because you can't let go of Marcus's money, or because you think Dylan's excuses made him less than Marcus. Her mouth opened and closed helpless. Don't worry, I added, voice sweet. Chloe clearly had no problem with Dylan behind my back. Mrs. Davis pointed at me, shaking. How can you be so disgusting? Go home, I said, my tone sharpening for the first time. And tell your daughter to stop destroying her own life and blaming other people for it. She realized she wasn't winning this fight. With one last glare, she stormed out, heels snapping against the floor like punctuation. My coworkers stared at me like I just survived a tornado, and walked out with perfect hair. Kyle stepped up, eyes wide. Audrey, that was insane. I smiled faintly. That was just the warm-up. Back in my office, I texted Marcus. Your wife's mom just made a scene at my company. He replied immediately. Do you need me to handle it? I typed back. No, I handled it. Thanks. Then I stared at my phone for a long moment, letting the quiet settle in. Life really was full of surprises. As for Dylan, I wanted him to leave with nothing. Not just the apartment or the furniture or the nice TV he always bragged about to his friends like he bought it with his own money. I wanted him to lose the story. For 3 years, I'd lived inside his version of us. The patient wife, the understanding wife, the wife who didn't pressure him while he nursed his mysterious, fragile ego like it was a medical condition, and not just a convenient excuse. Now I wanted my own version. One where I wasn't a prop. The first 24 hours after the scene in my bedroom passed in a blur. Marcus booked me a hotel for the night, because I refused to sleep in that apartment another minute. He didn't stay in the room. He dropped me at the door, handed me a key card and stepped back. I'll check in tomorrow, he said. You don't owe anyone an explanation tonight. Not even me. I nodded, fingers clenched around my suitcase handles so hard they ached. Thank you. He hesitated. Audrey, yeah, you did the right thing. I didn't feel like I had. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped me out and left the shell that could talk and walk and order room service, but wasn't actually there. But I went inside. I showered until the hot water ran lukewarm. I lay on white sheets that smelled like bleach instead of Chloe's perfume. I stared at the ceiling until the dim shapes turned into Dylan's face, Chloe's face, Marcus' expression when he walked into that room. I didn't cry. It bothered me a little, like the tears were stuck somewhere deep and couldn't find their way up. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages. Dylan, we need to talk. Dylan, you overreacted. Dylan, I can explain. Dylan, please pick up. Chloe, please. Audrey, please call me. Just give me a chance to fix this. Unknown number. Miss Blake, this is Attorney Shaw from Shaw and Rivera. I represent Marcus Evans. He asked me to reach out. He'd like to arrange a meeting regarding next steps. The text from the lawyer grounded me more than anything else. Next steps, like this was a project, like there would be tasks and deadlines and an eventual deliverable. I could do projects. I showered, dressed in clean clothes that didn't smell like my old life and replied, Audrey, thank you. I'm available this afternoon. I ignored Dylan's messages. I muted Chloe. By the time I walked into the downtown office with glass walls and 2 bright lights, I had a travel mug of coffee in my hand, and a thin layer of composure wrapped around me like armor. Marcus was already there, sitting at the end of a long conference table. He stood when he saw me, which would have been gentlemanly in another context. Here, it just felt strange, like we were pretending to be normal people walking through a normal day. Hey, he said quietly. Hey, I sat opposite him. The lawyer, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and softer hands, introduced herself as Ellen Shaw and slid a legal pad toward me. I'm not your attorney, she said. But Marcus thought it might help to coordinate strategy since your cases are intertwined. Intertwined. Neat little word for the tangled mess my life had become. We're talking about divorce, I said, testing the word on my tongue. It tasted metallic. Yes, Ellen said gently. Your divorce from Dylan. Marcus' divorce from Chloe. Asset division. Potential claims. We should also talk about reputational risk given the video. I stiffened. I'm not posting it online. Marcus looked at me, something unreadable flickering through his eyes. You could, he said. You'd be within your rights. I know, I said. That's exactly why I'm not doing it. Ellen nodded like I'd just given the correct answer to a test. Good. That helps. We spent the next 2 hours going through things I'd never wanted to memorize about my life. Income, savings, the mortgage, whose name was on which account. The fact that Dylan's car was technically in my name because his credit was a little rough when we got married, and I thought that's what spouses did, help each other. Ellen's pen paused over that one. So, the loan is solely in your name? She confirmed. Yes. And Dylan makes the payments. I hesitated. He was supposed to. Marcus's gaze sharpened. Was supposed to. He crept up my neck. I haven't checked in a while. He said it was on autopay from his account. Do you mind if we verify that? Ellen asked. Boy still gentle. An hour later, I learned there had been no autopay for 6 months. Notices had been going to Dylan's email, not mine. He'd been shoving letters into the back of a kitchen drawer like they disappear if he didn't look at them. Jesus, I whispered, staring at the screen Ellen had pulled up. He could have wrecked my credit. Marcus's jaw tightened. He almost did. Something ugly and shaky rose in my chest. Not tears. Anger, clean and sharp and bright. I want out, I said. I want him out of my life, out of my finances, out of my apartment. I don't want to be responsible for anything with his name on it ever again. Ellen's eyes were sympathetic, but businesslike. Then we make that the goal. You have the video. You have the loan documents. His infidelity and financial negligence give you leverage in negotiations. Marcus tapped his fingers on the table thinking. My parents' trust. He said suddenly the apartment. Ellen turned to him. You're sure you want to bring that into this? Better now than in a courtroom later. My stomach dipped. What trust? Marcus looked at me. You remember when you and Dylan moved into the apartment? The down payment? Of course. I'd practically sold a piece of my soul to save for it. We pulled our savings. You contributed some. He shook his head. You covered your half. I covered Dylan's. I blinked. What? Dad refused to co-sign for him, Marcus said flatly. He'd already bailed Dylan out twice. I didn't want you two stuck in that tiny rental forever, so I wired the money and put it through the family trust. It was cleaner for taxes. In the event of a divorce, the trust retains ownership unless my father approves a transfer. I stared at him. So the apartment is technically under the Evans Family Investment Trust. Ellen finished with Marcus as trustee. Dylan has no legal claim without the trust cooperation. The room tilted just a little. For the past 3 years, Dylan had walked around like he was doing me a favor by letting me live there. He'd made little comments when we argued. I pay more. I take care of us. You'd still be in some shoebox if it weren't for me. He never mentioned his brother's money. He never mentioned a trust. Does Dylan know? I asked. Marcus's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. He knows I helped. He doesn't know the details. He never asked. That landed in me like a second betrayal layered under the first. Not against me, against Marcus. Dylan had been lying to both of us in different languages. Ellen cleared her throat softly. This actually helps you, Audrey. With Marcus' cooperation and his father's consent, the trust can transfer the apartment to you as part of a settlement with Dylan. In exchange, you agree not to pursue alimony or further claims. Dylan walks away with his car, his personal items, and his choices. You keep your home, your credit, and your recordings. And Marcus, I asked, what do you get out of this? His expression didn't change, but something eased around his eyes. My freedom and the knowledge that Dylan doesn't get to use what my parents built as a cushion for cheating on his wife. I looked down at my hands. They weren't shaking anymore. Okay, I said. Let's do that. Ellen did. There's one more thing. Of course there was. Chloe's mother came to your workplace. She said that could escalate. She may try to file complaints, spread rumors, claim harassment. We should get ahead of that. I thought of Mrs. Davis in the lobby, shrieking about stolen husbands. What do you need from me? I asked. A timeline, Ellen said. Names. Anyone who witnessed the confrontation. And her gaze met mine. Your decision on how public you're willing to be with the truth. The more you try to keep the details hidden, the more room they have to fill in the blanks with stories that hurt you. The idea of more people seeing that video made my stomach twist. But I thought about my coworkers' faces when Mrs. Davis called me shameless. I thought about how easily they could have believed her if I just stood there and swallowed it. I'll give HR the video. I heard myself say if they need it. That's a big step. Ellen said. You're sure? No. Yes. Both. I'm not going to live my whole life cleaning up their lies. I said. If telling the truth is messy, fine. I'm tired of being the only neat one. Marcus's eyes warmed just slightly. That's the Audrey I know. I almost asked him what that meant, how he'd known me, beyond polite dinners and group holidays, and the occasional text about birthdays and gifts. Instead, I picked up the pen and started signing. The first time I saw Dylan again was 3 days later at HR. He was already in the small conference room when I walked in, wearing the same navy button-down he'd worn on our 3rd anniversary. I remembered because he'd spilled red wine on it that night and snapped at me for distracting him while he poured. He'd gotten the stain out or bought a new shirt. Either way, it fit him too well. He stood when I came in like this was some marital therapy session instead of an HR meeting. Audrey, thank God. This is all a huge misunderstanding. I didn't look at him. Where's Linda? Our HR manager, Linda Patel, came in right behind me with a folder in her hands and a calm, unreadable expression. Thank you both for coming, she said, taking a seat. I want to go over some concerns that were raised following an incident in the lobby. You mean when her little meltdown ruined my wife's reputation? Dylan said bitterly, sinking back into his chair. Linda, I understand you have to follow up, but this is a private matter. I almost laughed. He still said my wife like it was a fact, not a rapidly expiring technicality. Linda glanced at him, then at me. Personal matters become company matters when they cause disruptions in the workplace. Mrs. Davis's outburst upset staff, disrupted operations, and involved accusations between 2 employees, Chloe and Audrey, that could potentially lead to a hostile environment claim. Dylan stiffened. Chloe doesn't even work here. Technically, she's a contractor. Yes, Linda said smoothly. And as a contractor, she represents the company in front of clients. Her personal conduct matters too. But right now, I'm more concerned about Miss Blake. She was accused in front of coworkers of breaking up a marriage. Audrey, you said you had evidence that contradicts that claim. The room went quiet. This was it. The line between hiding to avoid humiliation and stepping forward to reclaim the narrative. 3 weeks ago, I would have shrunk, apologized for the commotion, tried to smooth everything over. I'd been smoothing things over my whole marriage. Dylan's moods, Chloe's flakiness, awkward comments at family gatherings about us. Still not expecting. Now I unlocked my phone, opened my gallery, and slid it across the table. Yes, I said. I do. Linda watched the video without reacting. No gasp, no dramatic hand to her chest. Just quiet, focused attention as the muffled sounds of the worst moment of my life leaked from the tiny speaker. Dylan shifted in his seat, color rising in his cheeks. You can't play that here. That's evidence, Linda said, without looking up, of behavior that could expose us to reputational risk and liability if Mrs. Davis continues making public accusations. She finished, rewound once, then gently locked my phone, and slid it back to me. Thank you, Audrey, she said. This is more than enough. Dylan leaned forward, trying for his most reasonable tone. Linda, come on. You've known me for years. You know, I would never purposely. This was a mistake, just a lapse. It doesn't affect my work. Your work performance isn't the issue, Linda said. Your judgment is bringing a contractor you supervise into your marital bed for a 3-year affair, allowing it to spill into your spouse's workplace. These are decisions, not accidents. The company has a responsibility to act. His head snapped up. What are you saying? I'm saying, Linda said that effective immediately. You'll be placed on unpaid leave while we complete an internal investigation. Depending on legal counsel's recommendation, termination is a likely outcome. You'll receive formal notice by email. The panic that crossed his face was almost a mirror of the one I'd felt when I saw that picture for the first time. Audrey, he said, turning to me. You're really going to let them do this to me after everything we've been through? My throat tightened. Everything we've been through. He said it like we were war buddies, like we'd survived something together instead of him walking me into gunfire and ducking behind me. I took a slow breath. I'm not letting them do anything. I said. You did this. You brought Chloe into our bed. You lied to me. You lied to Marcus. You lied to your boss, telling him you couldn't travel for work because of your condition when you were perfectly fine in my house with my best friend. This is just consequences. Finally remembering your name, he flinched. Linda stood. We're done here. Audrey, you're free to go. Dylan will escort you to collect your personal items. He opened his mouth, but the words that came out weren't for me. They were for himself. I didn't think it would go this far. He muttered. I believed him. That was the problem. He never thought anything through. Not the loan he'd shoved into a drawer. Not the lies he'd spun about his health. Not the day he'd put his hands on Chloe in my bed and assumed I'd never walk in 24 hours early from a business trip. For 3 years, I'd been the one thinking ahead for both of us. Now for the first time, I thought only for myself. The family confrontation came a week later. I didn't want to go. If it had been up to me, I would have let the Evans family implode quietly without my presence. But Ellen insisted and Marcus backed her up. My parents asked to see you, he said on the phone. You don't owe them that, but I know I said they deserve the truth. And Dylan is framing this as you overreacting and trying to steal his inheritance. Of course he was. Fine. Isaid. I'll come. The Evans house was exactly what you'd expect from people who had a family investment trust. Big without being flashy, quiet without being cold. I'd spent Christmases there, New Year's brunches, birthdays, where Mrs. Evans insisted on making everyone's favorite dish, even if it meant cooking 4 different courses. She opened the door herself when I arrived. Audrey, she said, and for a second, I braced for accusations, for anger, for the same shrillness I'd heard from Mrs. Davis in the lobby. Instead, Mrs. Evans pulled me into a hug that smelled like rosemary and laundry detergent. I'm so sorry, dear, she whispered into my hair. I had no idea. My throat burned. Thank you. I managed. She patted my cheek like she had the day of my wedding when she tucked a small blue ribbon into my bouquet and told me I was family now, no matter what my foolish sons say. She led me into the sitting room. Mr. Evans stood by the fireplace, jaw clenched, eyes on Dylan, who was pacing like a caged thing. Marcus sat in an armchair across from an empty love seat, elbows on his knees, hands folded. Chloe was nowhere in sight. Sit, Audrey, Mr. Evans said. His voice was clipped but not unkind. I sat on the love seat. Marcus slid over a little, leaving space between us that felt deliberate, respectful. Dylan glanced at me, then away. We're here, Mr. Evans began, because my younger son claims this is all a misunderstanding that's gotten out of hand. He says you're threatening to take him for everything he has. I almost laughed. Everything he has. What? His second-hand guitar and 3 monitors for his gaming setup. But I stayed quiet. He also claims Mr. Evans went on that you and Marcus are colluding to push him out of the family and steal his share of the trust, using this situation as an excuse. Dylan winced. Dad, don't. Marcus said, echoing the word he'd used in my bedroom. Just don't. Mr. Evans looked between us. So before we go any further, Audrey, I'd like to hear from you. What exactly is it that you want? A month ago, I would have said I wanted my marriage back. I would have said I wanted Dylan to love me and want me and be honest with me again. Now my answer came out clear and simple. I want out, I said. I want a divorce. I want my home secured so his bad decisions can't tank my life. I want my name off his car loan and any credit lines he opened behind my back. I want him to stop lying about what happened to your family and to mine. And I want to walk away without being dragged through the mud by people who did this to themselves. Mrs. Evans's eyes shone. She blinked hard. And what about your share? Mr. Evans asked of the trust of the business. I met his gaze. I never thought of your money as my share. I married Dylan, not your balance sheet. Dylan snorted. Oh, come on. Don't pretend you didn't know what you were getting. Marcus told me you were thrilled when Dad offered you that job referral. That referral got me an interview. I cut in. I got the job on my own. Something you'd know if you'd ever shown up for anything besides the Christmas party. His mouth snapped shut. Marcus's hand flexed on his knee like he was fighting the urge to applaud. Look, Dylan said, shifting his focus to his parents. Yes, I messed up. I've admitted that. But a divorce? Kicking me out of the company? That's extreme. You're going to ruin my life over one mistake? One mistake. Marcus repeated, voice suddenly sharp. You've been sleeping with my wife for 3 years. And lying about his finances, Mr. Evans added quietly. We got the bank notices when Marcus asked me to check the trust's mail. Dylan's face strained of color. You what? Mr. Evans turned to me. You didn't know either, did you? I shook my head. Not until last week. Then the first thing you should know, he said, is that we've already arranged to assume the loan under the trust, effective immediately. You won't be held responsible for any damage Dylan has done there. The second thing he looked at his younger son is that there is no share for Dylan to lose. He forfeited any future stake in the trust when he signed the behavioral clause in his employment contract. Dylan stared. What clause? The one you didn't read, Marcus said. The one Ellen highlighted and slid across the table while you were scrolling through your phone. I remembered that day faintly, Dylan bragging about joining the family company, saying it meant job security for life. It stated, Mr. Evans said that any employee who engages in sustained misconduct that damages the company's reputation or causes significant harm to immediate family members forfeits their eligibility for future equity distributions. He turned to me. We added the harm to immediate family part after Marcus's divorce from his college girlfriend nearly cost us a major client. You can thank your brother-in-law for that bit of foresight. Marcus's ears went slightly pink. You're welcome, he muttered. So you see, Mr. Evans said, looking back at Dylan, Audrey and Marcus are not stealing anything from you. You threw it away yourself. All we're doing now is making sure Audrey doesn't go down with you. Dylan looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. You can't do this, he whispered. I'm your son. Mr. Evans's expression softened, but only slightly. You will always be my son. That doesn't mean I finance your choices without consequences. He turned to me. As for you, Audrey, he said. If you wish to remain in the apartment, the trust will transfer ownership to you, as Marcus and Ellen proposed. Consider it a belated acknowledgement of the fact that you've been more responsible with our resources than the person who shares our blood. My vision blurred for a second. I blinked it clear. Thank you, I said quietly. But I'm not staying in a museum of my marriage. Not like it is now. Mrs. Evans leaned forward. You can repaint, she said softly. Change the furniture. Make it yours, not theirs. The words landed harder than she probably intended. Make it yours, not theirs. We spent another hour going over logistics, paperwork, timelines, who would talk to which lawyers when. Dylan alternated between sulking and pleading, occasionally shooting me wounded. Looks like I was the one walking away from a faithful partner, instead of the other way around. At one point he burst out. You're really going to burn it all down over sex? The quiet that followed was almost physical. I smiled thin and brittle. This isn't about sex, I said. If it were just about that, you could have told me you were unhappy, that you wanted to open the marriage, that you needed something I couldn't give you. That would have hurt, but at least it would have been honest. He scoffed. You would have never agreed to that. No, I said. You're right. I wouldn't have, which is probably why you lied. Because you wanted the comfort of my loyalty and the thrill of sneaking around with my best friend. His eyes flashed. You're not perfect. You know, you're always working, always on your phone, always talking about promotions and clients. You made me feel like I was never enough. It was the first honest thing he'd said in weeks. And it hurt because there was a grain of truth embedded in the accusation. I had been focused on my career. I had chased deadlines and numbers and the next step up the ladder, because I believed that building something for myself meant we'd both be safer, more stable. I thought I was doing it for us. You could have talked to me, I said softly. Instead you punished me. His brow furrowed. Punished you for wanting a life beyond you. I said you used your condition as a weapon. Every time I tried to initiate, you turned it into a referendum on my patience. Every time I got frustrated, you accused me of being selfish. You knew how much I wanted kids, and you dangled that dream over my head while you gave yourself freely to someone who demanded nothing from you but secrecy. He flinched like I'd hit him. Marcus looked at me sharply. You wanted kids? He asked quietly. I didn't look at him. Not anymore. Not with someone who uses them as leverage. Mrs. Evans wiped at her eyes. Yes, you did, she said. You used to light up whenever I held a baby at church. Dylan shook his head, muttering something under his breath about me making everything about feelings. For the first time, I realized that no explanation would ever land with him. Not really. His world was made of excuses and temporary discomfort smoothed over with other people's sacrifices. I was done sacrificing. The divorce itself was almost anticlimactic. Ellen worked faster than I thought possible. Within 6 weeks, we had a draft settlement agreement on the table. Dylan would get his car, his personal belongings, and a small cash payout from the trust, just enough to keep a judge from questioning the fairness of it. I would keep the apartment free and clear. The loan was transferred. My name was off his debts. There was a mutual no disparagement clause attached to a penalty significant enough to make even Dylan's foggy sense of consequences sharpen. But what if he still talks? I asked Ellen to people. I mean at bars to mutual friends. He will. She said people like him always do. But he won't say anything publicly traceable to you, or the company if he has any sense. And if he does, we'll deal with it. What about the video? I asked. She slid a separate document across the table. That's your line in the sand. You agree not to publish it publicly. He agrees not to contest its use in any legal proceedings if needed. You keep the master copy. Marcus has an encrypted backup. If Dylan violates the agreement in any serious way, we pull it out. I stared at the thin stack of paper that represented the complete dismantling of my marriage. When I walked in and saw them, I said slowly, I thought I wanted to destroy him. I thought I wanted to blast that video on a screen in Times Square. And now? Ellen asked. Now, I said, I just want peace. She smiled faintly. Then sign and go build it. The judge barely glanced at us when we appeared in court 3 weeks later. No dramatic gavel, no monologue about sanctity of marriage. Just a tired man in a robe confirming we understood the terms and had signed voluntarily. Divorce granted, he said. Next case, and that was it. 1 minute I was someone's wife. The next I was just me. Afterward, I stepped out of the courthouse into pale sunlight that made everything look too sharp. Dylan hovered a few yards away with his lawyer, watching me like he wanted to say something and couldn't decide if it would be an apology, an accusation, or a plea. I didn't wait to find out. Do you need a ride? A voice asked behind me. I turned. Marcus stood there in a charcoal suit, tie loosened, eyes searching my face. No, I said. I took the train. His mouth twitched. You always did like doing things the hard way. Not anymore, I said. I'm learning to accept help selectively. He nodded once. Offer stands for now or later. Rides, recommendations, contractors, if you decide to gut the whole apartment. Whatever you need. Why? I asked suddenly. Why are you this involved? It wasn't an accusation, just a genuine question. He took a breath like he'd been waiting for me to ask. Because I saw you before they did. He said at that fundraiser, my mom dragged me too. Remember? You were working registration. You checked me in, handed me a name tag, and asked me how my day was like. You actually wanted to know. Dylan was late. Chloe was flirting with a photographer. I frowned. That was you? I thought you thought I was some random donor, he said. I was. But you smiled at me like I was just a person. Not money, not status, just someone standing in front of you. He looked away for a second at the crowd, the street, anywhere but my face. When Dylan brought you home and introduced you as his girlfriend, he said quietly, I told myself I'd misread that first impression that you two were meant to be, and I was just projecting. So I stepped back. I watched you work yourself to the bone, support him, cover for him, defend him, and I watched him not see it. Something heavy settled in my chest. You knew he was like this, I said. He shook his head. I knew he was reckless. I knew he cut corners, made promises he couldn't keep, but I never imagined he'd keep this up for 3 years. That's not recklessness. That's commitment to the wrong thing. We stood there in the shadow of the courthouse. Divorced people watching other divorced people stream past like we were all walking out of the same movie at different times. You're not responsible for his choices. I said you didn't make him cheat. You didn't make him lie. No, Marcus said, but I helped build the net he thought would always catch him. So now I'm helping dismantle it. That's my piece to own. I thought of the apartment, of the trust, of the way Mr. Evans had looked at me with something like regret. What about Chloe? I asked. Is her divorce final too? He nodded once. As of this morning, she gets her car, her jewelry, and an agreement not to pursue further spousal support. She wanted half my shares. I snorted. Of course she did. She also wanted to keep the country club membership, he added dryly. She was more upset about that than about losing me. That sounds like her, I said. She always thought other people's lives were accessories. We fell quiet. Do you ever regret marrying her? I asked. He was silent for a long moment. Yes, he said finally, but not for the reason you think. I regret that I didn't see who she was before she hurt you. I regret that I didn't ask more questions when you started looking tired all the time. I regret that when you called me last month and asked if I knew why Dylan suddenly refused to be intimate, I told you to give him space instead of telling you to check his phone. I blinked. Wait, what? He looked startled. You don't remember? You were in the cab on the way to the airport. You said he told you it was stress again. You asked if he'd said anything to me. I searched my memory. The call came back in fragments. Traffic noise, my own voice tight with worry. Marcus on Bluetooth saying he was heading into a meeting, and could we talk later? I thought you were talking about his performance at work. I said weakly. You didn't. I never said. He rubbed a hand over his face. Of course you didn't. Because you're discreet. Because you protect people's dignity even when they don't deserve it. Something shifted between us then. Not romantic, not yet, but something like alignment. Like two people standing on the opposite sides of the same fault line, realizing they'd both been feeling the tremors for years. I'm not ready, I blurted before he could say anything that would make the ground under my feet feel any less certain. For anything, with anyone, I need to figure out who I am without being someone's wife or someone's best friend or someone's amazing sister-in-law. I know, he said. I'm not asking you for anything. Our eyes met. Not yet, he added, so soft I almost missed it. I didn't answer. That night, I went back to the apartment for the first time since everything exploded. It felt smaller than I remembered, quieter. The wall seemed closer, the furniture oddly anonymous, like it belonged to a stage listing online, and not to a life I'd actually lived. I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen, where Dylan had tossed bills into drawers and called it handling it. The bathroom, where I'd sat on the edge of the tub and cried once when my period was a week late, and then arrived anyway, convincing myself it was fine, that maybe it was for the best until he felt ready. The bedroom, the bed was stripped bare. The sheets were gone. Marcus had sent a cleaning service in while I was at the hotel, and they'd apparently exercised mercy on my behalf. The mattress alone looked harmless. I stood there breathing in the faint scent of generic detergent, and something else underneath. Memory. Then I walked to the window, opened it wide, and let the cold air in. The next morning, I made a list. Not of Dylan's offenses or Chloe's lies or Mrs. Davis's theatrics. A list of things I wanted my life to be. Silence without tension. Work that didn't require me to shrink myself at home, so someone else felt big enough. Friendships that weren't one-way pipelines of emotional labor. I wrote a dog and underlined it twice, then laughed out loud. Maybe not yet. Maybe steps. As weeks turned into months, the story spread the way stories always do. Not from me. Not from Marcus. From cousins who'd heard from a neighbor who'd seen something on Chloe's private Instagram before she locked it down. From a guy Dylan used to game with who worked in it and recognized his username in a chat log screenshot. People chose sides as they always do. Some chose poorly. Those people quietly faded from my contacts. Every so often, Dylan would text, "I miss you. I made a mistake. We were good together." I never replied. Once late at night after too much wine in a particularly lonely day, I scribbled out a response in my notes app. "We were never good." I wrote, "I was good. I made you look good. You mistook that for us." I deleted it without sending. Not because he didn't deserve to hear it, but because I didn't need him to understand in order for it to be true. One afternoon months later, I ran into Chloe by accident. It was at the mall of all places. I'd gone to return a blazer that felt too much like the old version of me. Tailored, serious, ready to smile at clients while swallowing my own exhaustion. She was standing in the middle of a boutique, holding a dress up to herself in front of a mirror. For a second, I didn't recognize her. She'd lost weight. Her hair, once glossy and perfectly styled, hung limp around her face. When our eyes met in the reflection, her hands went slack. The dress slipped from her fingers. "Audrey," she breathed. "God, I was going to call you. I've been meaning to. I just didn't know how to." "You shouldn't." I said. "Call. I mean, you lost that privilege." She swallowed, blinking rapidly. I know. I'm the worst person you've ever met. I don't sleep. I keep thinking about that day. About Marcus's face. About your face. This isn't about how you feel," I said. "Not anymore." She flinched. Her voice cracked. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know there was never a moment where I didn't feel guilty." I thought of the video. The way she smiled, eyes bright, like she was getting away with something delicious. "Guilt isn't the same as remorse," I said softly. "Guilt is about how you feel looking at yourself. Remorse is about what you do next." She opened her mouth, closed it again. "I lost everything," she whispered. "My marriage, my house, Marcus, you chose Dylan," I said. Over all of that repeatedly, her eyes filled. "He said you didn't. He said you weren't interested in. He said you made him feel like a failure. That you were cold. That you cared more about work than him." I thought I was helping. The sheer delusion of that last word almost knocked me over. "Helping?" I echoed. She stared at the floor. "I told myself that if he needed intimacy and you weren't giving it to him, it was better for it to be with someone who loved you. So, it didn't feel like cheating, just sharing." My stomach rolled. "That," I said, "is one of the most twisted things I've ever heard." She flinched again. "I know," she whispered. "I know that now." We stood there in the fluorescent wash of the store, a sales associate pretending to fold sweaters nearby while obviously listening. "For what it's worth," Chloe said, voice barely audible. "He wasn't happy with me either. He said the same things, that I was too much, too emotional, too demanding. He told me once that he wished he could combine us. Take your patience and my passion, and make one perfect wife." The words landed in my chest like a stone. "Of course he did," I said. "He's always treated people like pieces of furniture, rearranging them in his head until they suit him." She wiped at her face. "I just wanted you to know it wasn't worth it. None of it. I would give anything to go back and make different choices." "You can't," I said. "But you can make better ones now." Her eyes flickered up. "Do you? Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I thought about that for a long moment. "Maybe," I said, "finally someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean friendship. It doesn't mean trust. It just means I'm not carrying you around in my chest like a shard of glass anymore." She nodded, tears spilling over. "I'll take that," she whispered. I walked out without looking back. That night, I sat at my kitchen table in my repainted apartment, soft green walls instead of the old cool gray Dylan had insisted on because it looked more modern, and wrote. Not an angry text, not a rant on social media, just a letter to myself. "You are not what they did to you. You are not the nights you spent wondering what you did wrong. You are not the patience you weaponized against your own needs. You are the woman who walked into hell and didn't set herself on fire to keep anyone else warm. You are the one who walked out." Months later, when I woke up one morning and realized I'd gone an entire week without thinking of Dylan first thing, I knew something had shifted for good. I got up. I made coffee. I fed the cat I'd impulsively adopted from the shelter, a grumpy orange thing named Murphy who tolerated me only on his own schedule. My phone buzzed. Marcus, got any plans for Saturday? I smiled. Audrey, depends. Are you asking professionally or personally? There was a longer pause than usual. Marcus, personally. Professionally, I know better than to ask your availability without checking your calendar. My heart did a strange little flip. Audrey, in that case, I'm free after 3. Marcus, good. There's a new place downtown that does terrible live music and great tacos. Thought we could go laugh at the band and argue about salsa ratios. I stared at the screen, feeling a dozen things at once. Nervous, hopeful, cautious, curious. For a long time, I told myself I needed to be completely healed before I let anyone close again. Completely whole, completely over it. But maybe healing wasn't some finish line you crossed on a Tuesday with a certificate. Maybe it was a series of choices to do things differently, one small decision at a time. To tell the truth instead of smoothing it over, to walk away instead of staying to be chosen last. To say yes to someone who had seen you at your most broken and still asked for nothing you weren't ready to give. Audrey. Okay, but if the band is secretly good, I reserve the right to admit it. Marcus, deal. I'll pick you up at 3:15. I set the phone down, looked around my apartment, my space, my walls, my life, and breathed. For the first time in a long time, the air didn't feel suffocating. Dylan had left with less than he thought he deserved. I had walked away with more than I ever realized I had. Not just the apartment or the job or the carefully drafted legal protections myself. And as scary as it was, that felt like enough to build something new on. Maybe even something better.